All right, I'm going to show you how to assemble your train in Onshape. So the first thing you need to do is make sure to create an assembly, and then you're going to insert the parts. So I'm going to insert, let's see, 4 parts. You will not have an axle peg. We'll pull that from another spot. So we need to insert 1 cow catcher, a hitch magnet, a hitch peg, 2 linkage arms, and I'm just clicking for the number of times I want it, 4 linkage pegs, a smokestack, the track we'll do later, a train body, and 4 wheels. Once I've inserted those, I can click and that will place all of those, and then I'm going to get axle pegs from the standard content. In the standard content, we should have ANSI inch selected, bolts and screws selected, socket head screws selected from the class, and then in the component, socket button head cap screw is what these are called. Your size, you're going to want to select 1/4-20, and then the length is 1. After you have those all selected, you will click the insert button and then place, and that will do 1 at a time. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'll hit the check mark, and I will begin assembling the body, or the train. So I'm going to start with the body, and I'm going to move it just kind of out in the way for a little bit, and I'm going to choose to fix this. So I did a right click, and now I'm fixing the body in space. And so what that does is it makes it so I can't move it at all. That's going to be beneficial so we can tell if the wheels are moving the way they're supposed to. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out all the things that are going to be fasten mates, and I'm going to take care of, actually, I'm going to do the revolute mates first, and then I'll do the fasten mates. So I need to, right now I'm just kind of moving things away so it's easier to find them. So there's that. Move that up there, and then I think I'm just going to grab all 4 of those things and move them. Oh, that was fun. Over here. Okay, that should be fine. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is get these wheels connected. If you don't like that the mates are showing up on the wheels, I can go ahead and hide those. 2, 3, 4. That'll make it easier for you to see. Okay, so what I really want is I want the wheels to revolve around the axle that's going to go through this hole. But the computer doesn't really need the axle there in order to do a revolve. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a revolve mate. And I want these wheels to butt up right against the body. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the, oops, that made it difficult, didn't it? I'm going to select the outside of the hole. So that right there. Oh, I shouldn't say the outside. The back part of the hole of the wheel. And I'm going to connect it to the outside part of the hole on the body. And it's showing going the wrong direction there. So I'm going to switch directions. And that's the right direction. And then I'll hit check mark. And I can check and see that this thing actually revolves. And it looks like it's revolving. So that's good. There we go, that's a little bit better. I was having a hard time grabbing it earlier. And because I hit the check mark on that tinier box, a new revolute mate has already started or is waiting for me. So I'm going to do the next one between that hole and that hole. Switch the direction so it's facing outside, hit the check mark. And that one should also be revolving. Yep, looks good. All right, so now I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to get the back of this hole. I'm going to get the outside of this hole. And that's actually connecting correctly. Check mark that. And then one more time. I'm going to select the back of that hole, turn this around, and select the outside of that hole. Check mark that. And now we're ready for the next part. So I'm going to keep on the revolute mate because my linkage arms are going to have to connect to these wheels in a way that they're allowed to revolve, because we need that piece on the inside. This piece right here is going to need to be able to freely revolve inside of the holes of the linkage arms. So I'm going to choose the outside of this hole, and I'm going to link that to the outside of this thing right here. All right, it's going to connect outside to outside. One of the things to remember when you're doing the mates, you're basically telling the computer which two planes you want to be basically in line with each other. And so that's why I'm choosing the ones that I do. So I'll check mark that. It's ready for my next revolute mate. And this looks like it's already linked, which is crazy. It's actually not. That almost never happens. I don't know how I got that to happen. So I'm going to do the same thing though. I'm going to choose the outside of this hole and the outside of this. Link those together, check mark, good to go. And then if I move this bar, it should move the wheels. Yep. Now right now it's going all wonky. We can fix that later. Eventually it kind of just fixes itself, but then later on it'll go wonky again. So I'm going to do that same thing to the other side. Going to find my linkage arm, find the hole, click on that, and then it doesn't matter which one of these right now that I choose. So I'll choose this one. That one's ready to go. And then choose this. And then choose that right there. Check mark that. And then should be good. All right, and that really is all the revolute mates I should have. The other things are going to be fastened, so I'm going to hit the X on this box and be ready for fasten mates. I'm going to double check this linkage arm seems to be working, which it is. Great. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to do a whole bunch of fasten mates. So I'm going to choose fasten mate, and I am going to, what I want is I want this axle peg to go into the hole all the way towards the bottom of this hole. So I'm trying to force the computer to know what to put onto what. So I'm going to put the bottom, I know, sorry, that's kind of hard to see. I'm going to put the bottom of this axle peg. That's going to be my mate my mate connector there. I'm going to link that to the bottom of this hole right here. I have to be careful because I don't really want the pointed bottom. I want the bottom of the cylinder. So right now I have the cylinder. I'm going to hold shift so I can move to that back spot right there. And then I'm going to take a look, and it looks like that thing is on the other side of what I want. So I'm going to switch directions. And then furthermore, it's not really out far enough. There's some distance in there that we need to make up. And so I'm going to throw an offset in there in the Z direction. And I think 0.25 inches is probably too far, but I'm going to try that. Okay, and that made it go the wrong direction. So I'm going to do negative 0.25. All right, and that brought it out pretty far, definitely farther than I wanted. So I'm going to try negative 0.14. Okay, and that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of a gap there, but that's a reasonable amount of gap to allow the wheel to actually spin if I were creating it. Now I want to make sure that I use that same offset every time. So I'm going to make sure that it's a distance of 0.14. It might be negative, it might be positive, depending on which side of the train I'm on, but it should work out. Oops, and I accidentally hit the check mark on the main box instead of the little box. So, all right, so I'm going to choose that mate right there, and I'm going to go to this hole right here. And once again, I want to choose the back of the hole and make sure the direction is right and set my offset. That's, you can get the idea here. Negative 0.14. There we go. I'm going to check mark this box and then do the last two. All right, now that I have all the axle pegs in there, I'm going to put the linkage pegs in. Very similar sort of thing, although this time I don't think we're going to need an offset. So I'm going to choose the bottom of that and have that go into this hole right here, all the way to the back. Switch direction, check mark. That looks pretty good there. And do that for all four of these. Alright, now that the linkage pegs are in there, I am going to fasten the rest of these things. This magnet goes onto this hitch peg, and basically I just want the top of this hole to connect to the top of the cylinder. So I just have to make sure to choose the top of the cylinder. There's that. And then I want this cylinder, which is a, or not the cylinder, this ring, which is a magnet. I want that to connect to this right here. The magnet should be sticking out, and so what I'm actually going to do is pick a point on the bottom of the magnet and then pick the circle right here, and that should match really well. So I'm going to zoom in here. I want to make sure that I'm on the surface of the magnet. I'm going to choose that as my first mate, and then zoom in on here, get the outside of that hole, switch direction, and then you notice that the peg didn't come with it, but if I hit the solve button, it'll show the peg with it, and then I'll hit check mark, and then that'll happen. So we have that, and then we have the smokestack that we need to do. So I'm going to choose the bottom of the smokestack. I'm going to choose the cylinder bottom. Make sure the smokestack's sticking out. That looks good. Check mark there. And then the last one, again, since we're doing a fasten mate, we're kind of gluing it in. So I only have to pick one of these 3 pegs to glue, quote unquote, into the front of this thing. So I chose the top hole. So I got to choose the top hole here, all the way to the back. Switch directions, and then you'll see it's rotated in a weird way. So I just rotate it until it fits the right spot. That looks good. Check mark, and we're good. Okay, so for those of you that are like, yeah, okay, Mr. Wilkins, how do we really know that this is put together well? All right, so your little secret here is if you go to this menu and you choose, where to go? Oh, I have to get out of this first. If you choose interference detection, you can highlight all of the parts there, and it'll show you where there's interference happening between parts. Only interference I'm seeing right now is it looks like the holes are a little bit off from each other. That's really interesting, isn't it? So maybe there's something wrong with the body, and those holes are not exactly fitting the way they're supposed to. That's very interesting. So something to pay attention to for sure. If this is, a train that we were trying to make. Okay, so that might be where a potential issue is. All right. Well, that's that. And then now what we got to do is we need to add in the track. Oh, and yeah, we're good. All right, so before we add in the track, I'm going to do a couple things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that you cannot see the mate connectors on those screws, because that gets really annoying. Makes it not look very good. So I'm not, oops, that is not what I wanted to do. I meant to, hide the mate connectors. There we go. Okay, I hit all those. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the track, and I'm going to do 3 pieces of track. All right, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and check mark there. Now I'm going to pick one of these, and I'm going to fasten the bottom middle of this track to the origin. That way it's locked in. All right, that thing is not going to move at all. If I try to click and drag it, it won't move. Now my train right now can't move either because we chose to fix it. We're going to unfix it so that I can move my train. All right, it's going to get all sorts crazy right now. Then we're good there. It is now unfixed. And now what I can do is I can connect these track pieces together. So I want the tongue to go into the groove there, and all I need to do is choose a fasten mate and fasten the middle of that circle to the middle of this circle, and that should be good. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other part of the track. So I'm going to do the middle of that, middle of that. Oops, that did not work. Let's try this again. Middle of that. There we go. That's much better. Check mark there. Tracks are lining up. Good to go. All right, so then the last part is we are going to connect the train to the track. to connect the train to the track, you're going to start with a slider mate. We want this train to basically slide along the track, and then we want its wheels to turn as it's sliding along the track. So first we got to set up the slide part of this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point that's kind of easy to reference. The key to doing a slider mate is you want to pick a mate on the surface that's perpendicular to the direction you're trying to go. So I'm trying to go along this line that I've highlighted, but what I really want is I want the end of that line. And so I'm going to choose this surface, and I'm going to choose this point on the inside top corner of the track. And what that'll do, I have to make sure that it's pointing outward when I do that. So I chose the blue axis needs to be pointing outward away from the surface that I'm trying to be on. All right, so that kind of gives that blue thing is called the z-axis, and what it does is that tells you which direction the slider mate is going to go. Now what I want to do is I want to line that up with something on the train that should be going along, essentially along that, right, in that same direction. And that thing on the train is going to be the corner where the fillet is made. So that corner right there is what I want. I want to make sure, so I'm going to hover over the front surface of this train body, and I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to go down. I want to make sure again that that blue line is pointing outward away from that corner in the direction I want the train to go. And what it's going to do, it's going to move the body only, which is kind of frustrating. You're like, what is going on here? But again, if you hit solve, that'll bring everything together. And then, I don't know why it's not connecting to the track right now. That's because apparently I chose the body twice. So let's try to do this again. Shift. There we go. Solve. I don't understand. Let me see if choose that. This is not working correctly. I'm going to try this one more time. Slider mate between that and that. There we go. Solve. That's better. Alright, now, it's better in one way, but you'll notice that it kind of looks like the track is jello, because the train's just kind of sunk into it. That's because we need to set a couple of offsets so this sets on the track correctly. So we're going to set two offsets. The first offset is going to be that the x-axis, that would be the one going this direction, needs to be offset by 0.05, and probably it's negative 0.05, but I'm going to try 0.05 and hit enter. Yeah, that moved it away from the center. I want to move it closer to the center, so I'm going to do negative 0.05. Alright, and I'm going to hit solve, and that's going to bring everything together, and you can kind of see now that the wheels are right in the middle of the track, which is exactly what I want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the y-axis, and that's going to be a distance of 0.54. I'm going to have to go negative so that it goes up for me. I'm going to hit check mark on that, and there you go. Now it looks like it's on the track, and not only that, it's riding along the track, which is good. Now you can tell that the wheels are not moving. All right, they are just sliding, 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 and that's kind of weird because that's not how that train's supposed to work. So I have to set up a relationship between the slider mate and these things turning. So I'm going to go and do what's called a rack and pinion. And on the rack and pinion, I need to choose a slider mate and a revolute mate that are going to connect with one another. So the slider mate is pretty simple. I'm going to choose the slider mate that I just made. The revolute mate, I want to pick one of the revolute mates I did with the wheels. Well, those were my first 4 that I did, so I'm going to choose the first one, revolute 1, as my revolute mate. And there's some stuff that's going to happen here that it doesn't simulate very well until we're out of this window. So I'm going to hit check mark. I need to switch over to the other side. And as I slide this thing, you'll notice that the wheels are going. Now, they're going in a weird way. First of all, they're going the wrong direction. And secondly, they're going way too fast. And so I need to edit that rack and pinion in 2 ways. First, I need to reverse the direction so that when I move this thing, the wheels move the direction they're supposed to move. So as I move it backwards, the wheels should be moving backwards. They were kind of there. It was hard to tell. And then also, right now, it's going 1 inch distance on the track for every time I go around this, have this wheel go around. Well, the problem with that is this wheel is way bigger than a circumference of 1 inch. It is a 2.5 inch diameter wheel. So when I take the diameter, 2.5 times pi, I get approximately 7.85. So it should be moving more like 7.85 inches for every 1 revolution. And so now, there we go. It looks like it's actually going the way it's supposed to go. Fancy that. Now it looks good, but other side, it's not moving at all. It's still sliding. So we could either do another rack and pinion with a revolute mate from this side, or the other thing we could do is we could do a gear relation. And this gear relation basically just allows 2 things that have revolute mates to turn at a ratio compared to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my revolute 1, the one that I used on the other side of this train, to do my rack and pinion with. And then I also want to choose one from the other side of the train, which is revolute 3. Hit check mark on that. Yeah, the ratio needs to be 1, because I want every wheel turn of this to be equal to 1 wheel turn of that. So that's good. Check mark. And now I need to check this side and see if it's revolving. And it is. It's going back and forth. Looks all good. Okay, now, every once in a while, there's a chance this thing is going to get wonky on you. The linkage arm. If you want to make sure that that linkage arm always stays level like this, then what you're going to do is you're going to choose what's called a parallel mate. And you want to just basically tell which surfaces you want to remain parallel. So I want the bottom surface of this linkage arm to always stay parallel to the top surface of this. All right, and it's going to move it there, but then if I hit solve, it's going to put it right back, because a parallel mate doesn't do that. Now within this same parallel mate, I'm pretty sure, I'm going to double check, I should also be able to do the bottom of this linkage arm and hit solve. And now, is that, can I only do 2? No. What do you know? I can only do 2. So, guess I have those 2 right now. I'll hit check mark, and then I will do this one. So the bottom of this to the top of this. Solve. There we go. All right, so now it should be working. Those things are going to stay parallel at all times, which is really helpful. Woohoo! And then the last thing to show you is that you can actually animate this and make it move on its own. So if I go right click on in the browser on my slider, I can go to animate, and this thing's going 7.5 inches at a time, so I'm going to choose like 0 to 30 inches as my start and end value. And reciprocate just means it's going to go back and forth. I'm going to hit play, and then it's going to start that edge of the track, and there it goes. It's moving. That's pretty cool. If I want to speed it up, then I just change the number of steps for this to work. So if I do 30 steps, I think, yep, it's going to go really fast. If I do, what was it, 100, should go a little bit better. Yep, a little faster. And so on. So there you go. That is everything.